Hey guys, Kirk here, and thank you for joining me on a new video on the channel. In this video I want to cover a couple of techniques called Bump-Offset and Parallax Occlusion Mapping, or better known as POM. Essentially what these techniques do is they use a height map to then layer an albedo texture on top of each other to create the visualization of depth. And like I say, in today's video I'm going to showcase how to get both these techniques working and how to utilize it the best you can. In the next video I'm working on a master material, or its own series on my channel called Asset Master Material, in which we're building a master material for all assets like Quixel or any you import from other asset packs and all that good stuff. I'd recommend watching the whole series if you want to build your master material. But if not, and you just want to know about Bump-Offset and Parallax Occlusion, then stick with this video. But like I say, in the next video we'll be back to the Asset Master Material and we will implement this technique into our master material. Okay, so what I need is a mesh. I'm going to come to the top left here with this little plus icon. Click that, go to shapes and click and hold the cube and drag that in. This is a little bit too small for me. So I'm going to increase the scale in the details panel here with the padlock locked. I'm going to click on the X and press 2. And with the padlock locked, it will uniformly increase the scale by 2 for each axis. So now we have a cube that is 2 meters by 2 meters. Okay, so I need a material. This is the folder we're working on in our Asset Master Material series, and I've created a little new folder. You just right click, new folder, and I've called it testing. We'll right click in there and get material in here. Just call this test bump. Like so. I'm going to right click this straight away and create material instance and drag that material instance on our cube. I'm going to come in here and open our test bump. There's a couple of versions of Bump-Offset. If I right click and just type bump, you'll see I get a Bump-Offset node. If I right click again and type bump, again we'll get the Bump-Offset advanced. Essentially these two are the same. This is a little bit more expensive than the node itself. With the Bump-Offset Advanced, it just gives you all the options that this doesn't. Well, you've got your height ratio and your height map input and your UVs, where you get your height map input here, your UVs and your height ratio, but you also have a camera vector in which you can change what camera vector you use. By default the camera vector in tangent space, but would use world space if the UV coordinates are in world space. Okay, so that's just converting your camera vector from tangent space to world space, and you get your reference plane as well, which indicates the angle at which your camera vector will look at for that reference plane, with the value of 1 being from the top and the value of 0 being from the bottom. As a default it's set to 0.5, which is smack bang in the middle. For this video we're just going to use the node. This is it's just all this function is doing, it's this node, but it's exposing more inputs for calculation reasons. But I wouldn't use this, it's a little bit more expensive and it's counterintuitive. If you want to go to levels like this, then I'd just end up displacing the mesh itself. So we'll use this. Okay, so what we need to take into account with this is the right textures. So I'm going to come to my masters textures. I've got some textures here already. These textures are available in Engine. If you click on your content alone like this and then type in there T_brick clean 02, and you'll see these textures should appear apart from the UV one. What I'm going to utilize here is my base color, my height, my normal and my roughness. This other one is just a mask if you want to use like emissive things and good stuff like that. I'm going to drag these in here This is my roughness, this is my normal, and this is my base colour and height. So my base colour is going to go into here, my normal will go into here, and then my roughness will go into here. What I'm also going to do is hold one on the keyboard and left click and get a constant value, a constant one vector if you like, and just plug that into metallic and specular so I get no reflections on there at all. I'm just setting them to 0. Okay, so with the bump-offset it works with UVs, so we're just going to drag these into the UVs of our texture samples here. Also keep in mind to highlight all your texture samples and change them to shared wrap. It's probably not needed for this kind of video, but it's always a good thing to get in the habit of changing your samples to shared wrap to stop any kind of breakage in the future. So for coordinates, I'm going to hold U on the keyboard and left click, just get a texture coordinate node in. In the bump offset node itself, you have a texture constant coordinate of 0, which just means it's 1 by 1, which is the same as this. As you can see, it says texture coordinate 0, which is the index, and it's just defaulted at that. You don't necessarily need this. This is just in case you want to add your own kind of UVs, which I will be doing from our master material, so you'll see that in the next video. We need the height map in here. That height map goes in there, and then we need a height ratio input. Right click and hold there, just get rid of input, don't need that. Dash in there, press enter. As you can see, we're getting no effect. If I set this to a cube, we're getting no effect here because the value of height ratio is set to 0. We want to add a little bit of depth to this. The value is set at 0, but if I come in here and just do a 0.02, like so, you'll see now we're getting a little bit of depth on our texture because it's working off this height map. Okay, so let's have a quick look at this height map. You can see the height map here at the top right. It's a 2K texture. If I scroll right in here so we can see it properly, you'll see we've got our blacks, which are the depth, and our whites, which are the heights. We have a little bit grayscale in between, but technically speaking, the texture itself is probably not great for something like this. You will want a lower resolution texture. If you could like go in Photoshop or GIMP or Paint.net, probably Paint.net is probably the best for free assets, for free usage. Paint.net is not far behind Photoshop and it's free, so I use Paint.net all the time. But what you need is some sort of blurring on this sharp line here. If you can blur the sharp line out, it will help dramatically with your bump offset and parallax occlusion mapping. As when you create this form of depth from your height texture, it, like I said earlier, it creates layers in your albedo texture using the height map. And if you've got sharp lines through your blacks and whites here, it's just not going to have a good amount of coverage on your steps. But I'll showcase that more in detail later on. So essentially right now, that's set up quite well. If we hit apply, we jump back into our scene, highlight the cube, press F on the keyboard to zoom in, hold left Alt and left click on the mouse. If I scroll around this slowly, you can see we're getting that depth on our texture. You can clearly see it on this side because of the sun is up there somewhere. There it is. We're clearly seeing that depth there. That light is bouncing. If I open this material instance up, slow this camera down a bit. If I increase this depth now, the height ratio, you'll see we're getting that bit of depth. If the values go too high, you'll see that we start getting these white marks. If I get a bit closer, and what this is the texture underneath the mortar, this mortar which is in between the bricks. And that is the artifacts you get with bump offset. As you can see, they change depending on my camera view. I come right around there, they come there as well on the edges. But that is solely down to the height map with how sharp them lines are. If I just put 0.05 in here, 0.02, you were getting a nice depth effect there. You can see maybe a 3, 0.03. It starts to break there, 0.02. You can further come in here, this kind of thing. This may work, it may not. Power, get a power node, drag that into your height map, and what this is going to do is get a scalar parameter. Call this height contrast. It's going to enable a little bit of contrast to try and cover up them artifacts. If you want it a bit more depth, you can see straight away. Right, add this. There you go. It's starting to clean up them artifacts a little bit more, like so. But if you come right around the edge, you'll see that the texture is still flat. But once your camera view is in front of it, or at the side of it at least, getting a little bit depth. So if I go 0.03 now, we're getting them white marks, some artifacts, but if we increase the contrast, it tries and gets rid of them white marks. But it can only do it so much. So if I go 0.025, completely gets rid of them lines. But if I empty my contrast, you'll see them artifacts coming back. So just increase your contrast and it'll get rid of that. Them dodgy looking artifacts. Okay, so we're getting a nice bit of depth. You can tell with the top brick here, there's a good bit of depth there. Might be a little too high, that 0.02. But yeah, I'm getting good depth there. And that's simply how the bump offset works. You can utilise that with many material instances as possible. Okay, so like I say, that's the bump offset. You could collect all these and make your own material function out of it and add it into a Quixel master material. I'm not going to showcase that because I want to showcase adding this to my master material and not to a Quixel one. So yeah, so what we shall do now is create a new material and go over POM. We'll go to materials, testing. We'll come in here, right and click and get a material, call it test POM. I'm going to right click that and create material instance. What I want to do is utilize this floor to try and see if it works on this floor, because this will be quite good to use. So if I click on our floor, it's a Quixel. It's not a Quixel one, sorry. I'll come in here. This is using our actual master material that I've been making in the series. If I open this up and just navigate to where that texture is, and then come back to my, oh wait there, keep the changes, yeah. This is surfaces, shoreline, beach rock. I can always find it again. Materials, testing, POM, and we'll get them textures. Sorry about this, guys. There you go. Just going to get these textures in here, and like I say, I want to utilize. I'll just quickly set these up, guys. This is my base color. This is the ambient occlusion. Well, let's just check the texture. ORD. So it's always good to check. That's ambient. That's occlusion, roughness, and displacement. So that goes into the roughness. I'll press 1 on the keyboard and get a 0 on there. Put that into the specular and metallic, and then our normal to the normal map. Like so. Get a nice texture. That is really nice texture actually. Okay, so what I want to do, if I open this texture up again, go to the height. This is our height map. In this one, it's a 4K texture, but it's a nice texture. You see we've got some whites here, which are highs. We've got some grey scale in there, and we've got some deep dark blacks right at the bottom. This will be a good height map to use. So what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to right click and just type OCC, and you'll see we get Parallax Occlusion Mapping. Now this function is quite large, you can see, don't be intimidated by it. It's not really that bad. We're only going to be using this top half here. The rest of it is for like ray tracing and other particular things like your shadows and your light vectors. But for the sake of this video, we're just going to use the top bit here. We don't need all this. This does work really well with ray tracing though, keep that in mind. But it is very expensive to use. So, because these are Quixel textures, what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on our texture sample and left control and D and duplicate it. Don't worry about that error, it'll go away when we apply this height texture. Okay, so let's go back to our testing. I just want to showcase something real quick. If I open our bump, what we're doing here, we're sampling our height map into our bump offset node. This bump offset node needs a height map to sample, so you're telling that node what height map to use, whereas with the POM we just need to reference our height map. So to do that, we're sampling the texture here, so we're telling that function to use this texture, but because it's parallax occlusion mapping, it just wants a reference to the height map. You're still telling it essentially what to use, but it just wants a reference to it because all the functionality is inside that function and it's used multiple times. So if we right click on our height texture or our stack texture, convert to a texture object and plug that in, it'll work just fine and our error is gone. Similar to our bump, I'm going to get this left control and C and copy that. Oh, I don't know where we've gone. And we'll just click in here and just left control and V. Got a height ratio. We'll throw that into our height ratio there. Not much should be happening on that just yet. We do need min max steps, and what this is if I come back to the bump here, put a cube on it, and you'll see here you can clearly see the artifacts in between the height, the albedo and the height map. These artifacts, and essentially what min and max steps do, it tries and counteract that. Where we've applied this height contrast to the bump offset, the min and max steps will try and counteract them kind of steps between each layer of the albedo. As you can see, that needs a default value of 8 and a default value of 32. So if we right click this and promote to a parameter, just throw that in here, and the max steps as well. And it did say we need a minimum steps of 8 and a max steps of 32. Okay, now so that should work as it is. We do need UVs, so if we hold U on the keyboard and left click, get a constant coordinate node. Right, so next the height map channel, if you hold 4 on the keyboard and left click, and essentially what this height map channel is saying is, like with our texture object here, if I open this up again, you'll see this is our Quixel texture. It's a stack texture, so we have our ambient occlusion, which looks like really nice actually. Our green one is a roughness, and our blue channel is the height map. So with this, let's close that off. With this height map channel, we're telling this function which channel of our texture to use. So with that being in our blue channel, we plug that straight in and we'll put a 1 in the blue channel. Now we're telling this function what channel of that texture to sample from. Our reference plane, we could just hold 1 on the keyboard. This is, like I said before, where it gives the camera vector the angle to view from, like up for 1 and down for 0. For this I'm just going to put 0.5 in there, throw that straight in there. and this should work just fine and dandy. Right, so okay, so that is essentially set up now. Keeping in mind, if you show masters textures, you have a height map that's on its own. It's not stat texture like Quixel. You still need to convert it to a texture object and plug it in, but in the height map channel with a height texture, it's classed as an RGB, so it is in every channel like so. It's in all channels, so in there it doesn't really matter if that's set to a 1 on the blue channel, a 1 on the green channel, or a 1 on the red channel. I would recommend, if you're using just a solo texture like this, to set it to the red channel, as that has priority over the green and blue. Okay, so if we apply that now, we'll come to our scene, we'll get our material instance, materials testing, and POM instance, just drag that onto our floor, just let the shaders compile, and you'll see straight off the bat with POM that there is the signs of depth straight away, and we've not even increased the value. If I go back to my masters, master material, mesh master, you'll see if I bring the floor on, do that, you can see that it's completely flat. Just keep watching that floor, it's completely flat. But if I come back to my materials, testing, POM instance, straight away you can tell that difference. One thing you must take into account though, if I open the POM, that I have got the 0 in the metallic and specular, so that is getting rid of all kind of reflections off the floor, but you can tell straight away. So if I click on this and open this material instance up, you'll see I'm getting that depth straight away. If I increase this to 0.03, you see it straight away move then. If I put 0, it's similar to how it was before, 0.01, 0.02, we're getting that effect of depth there, 0.03. Yeah, obviously at some point it will break, so 0.05, and it's starting to break. If I zoom in here, you can see that layering. Like I said earlier in the video, it layers the albedo up on top of each other to give the illusion of depth using the height map. If I'm further away like this, you can hardly see that. And if that's a bit of an issue, just have a play about with your min and max steps, and you can start seeing that this is changing it up a little bit. If I draw these in a bit, you can start to see the terracing of our thing. So I'm going to put that down, 0.04. That's too high. When I come to my min steps, just increase this closer to the 23, and it's trying its best to get rid of this terracing effect that we're getting. Lower my min steps, increase my max steps. You can try really hard to get rid of them. Like so. But at a distance like this, you can hardly tell the terracing. Plus I'd go to 0.03 and I'd reset the min and max steps to default, and that looks nice if you compare it to a standard normal shader. So if I come in here, how should we do this? Let's go to our, click on this, we'll find where this texture is like this, come back to the scene, and we'll just apply the Quixel material instance to the floor. And you can see straight away the difference between normal shaders and the Parallax Occlusion Mapping. I'll come back in here, go to my masters, materials, testing, and this is my POM. And now I've double checked that floor again, guys. You can see that it's nice and shiny because they've kept the specular and roughness alive, metallic. If I put this material instance on there, boom, complete difference, and it looks a lot better in my eyes. And that is the power of POM. Very, very useful if you're doing things like this. Obviously, once you start getting up close to it, you're starting to see that terracing and you're getting that breakage from the height map there. But from a distance like this, which most scenes will, like, you'd probably go across like this, and that looks really good to me. Okay, so that is the power of parallax occlusion mapping, or better known as POM, and bump offset for walls like this. It's up to you how you utilise it. If you're interested in applying this to your master material like we're doing on this channel, or even to a Quixel material, then like I say, check out that series I'm doing, Asset Master Materials, and you will learn a lot about creating nice shaders like we're doing on this channel. So if this helped you out a little bit and you got the effects that you want, then hit that subscribe button, show your support, and hit the like button. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments below, or jump on our Discord and ask me in there. You'll get a quicker response. And also in the Discord I have textures that I've used throughout my channel in there, free to download. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video. Bye.